Hey you guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today we're talking about two of my favorite finesse techniques for cold water winter bass fishing. I love to power fish in the winter. I love throwing crankbaits, swim baits, jerk baits, all sorts of different things. But there's a time and a place to just slow down. Sometimes I'm not trying to catch a 10-pounder. Sometimes I'm just trying to catch a fish. I just want to go out and have a good time. And that's when I turn to a Ned and a tube, when I just plain want to get bit. I want to put fish in the boat. I don't want to struggle. Sometimes in the winter, that's what it's all about, getting out of the house and having a ball. Now, when I sat down to shoot this video, I was only going to talk to you about Ned Rigs, and I was thinking of the couple of things that I really wanted to share with you that I thought would help. And I started thinking about it, and I thought, you know, this is the same exact time that I throw a tube. And that's how we got to here with Neds and tubes. So, few little tricks for the Ned, few little tricks for the tube to give you some confidence as you're out there fishing this winter. When water's cold, it's a whole different ball game than when the water's warm. So with my Neds, let's start with Neds and with tubes. Okay, both are fantastic. Both are interchangeable. I'll literally tie both on. I'll tie a Ned rig up, I'll tie a tube up, and I'll have them both on the deck. And I'll be trying those different techniques until those fish start reacting, because on any given day, either one of those can be your better option. So with the Ned, I keep it pretty simple. I grabbed 4 baits here, but there are tons of Ned baits on the market, right? That whole entire topic has exploded. What I look for in the winter is 2 different things, actually. Sometimes I want profile. Sometimes I just want that Ned rig, do nothing, dead. I don't know why they eat it, but they eat it. So let's talk profile first. 2 baits that are a little bit different, are a little bit unique. Maybe you live in a state where the water doesn't get quite as cold. Your water's not in the high 30s. Maybe it's in the upper 40s, low 50s. You just don't get that cold. When it comes to profile, I've got 2 that I like in the winter. This guy, the Z-Man Craws. It's just a little tiny crawdad profile. Put that on that Ned head. It's like an even finessier version of a micro jig, right? You just lose the jig. It's just that little craw profile. When that water's cold, but not just completely frozen, I love to just slow pull that bait. Just let it sit on bottom. Amongst all of the different creature style Ned baits that have come out, that is my favorite. The other one is this guy, which is my actual favorite Ned bait. Just across the board. I don't know why this bait speaks to me so much, but I just love this thing. And this is that Savage Gear Salamander. That little guy is just an awesome bait. I love that it's that full profile. It's got that full head. It's got little arms and claws on it. I just think that is the coolest bait, and I've done exceptionally well with it. I fell in love with that bait before I even put it in the water. I looked at one in a package and I was like, that's my new favorite Ned bait. I was with Tim and he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't even have to throw it. That's the one. And then I went out on the water and saw exactly that. It was awesome. I started catching fish on it right away. I just love this profile. It's that little lizard salamander type profile. It's just that little something extra. But you see how it's got a narrow section that when I try to hold it up, it wants to flop over. It's got a narrow section, then it's got that bulbous tail. That bulbous tail just wants to move in that water when you're bumping that thing. And that's a big deal in cold water, just subtle movement. So if I could only choose one in that lizard type profile, it's that guy. So those 2 are kind of those creature type profiles for this time of year, really for any time of year. But just truly dead action, fish them ultra slow. I turn to the Ned rig when I just want to catch fish. And I've got a few different heads. I'll get to the heads in a second, but let's talk about the other 2 baits too. Now more of that true Ned worm profile, just that straight worm. This is the Robo Ned worm, the 3-inch Robo worm. This little guy is fantastic. When it comes to true ice cold water, fishing slow, finesse fishing, that's my worm, and it's that color. In the wintertime, like let's say I'm throwing jigs, I throw a lot of super matte brown. That's like brown, purple, cinnamon. I throw go-to, that's green pumpkin brown. And then I throw a lot of browns and oranges, right? Basically those three are kind of what I throw. There you've got kind of that green pumpkin, brown, orange, purple. There you've got that brown, purple. Got those green pumpkins. Those same basic colors carry across everything I do in the winter. In that cold water, there is something special about that purple. This bait, truly, it does nothing. I rig it up, I throw it out there, it falls, and it tends to sit, like a Z-Man will sit up, right? Because it's super buoyant. This is not as buoyant, so if here's bottom, it tends to sit about like this. It doesn't sit flat on the bottom, it's not dead, it just sits up a little bit. It does not sit like this. I think there's something to that. If you ever look at pictures of like dragonfly larvae or any of those guys that are living in the water, when they sit on the bottom, their tails have a little bit of rise to it like that. I swear there's something to that. Anyway, it's sort of an odd little tangent, but the fish eat this profile, and specifically this color, which I don't think Margarita Mutilator or MM3, I don't think they look like anything in nature whatsoever. They are bright purple. I don't know if that's showing up in the camera for you or not. They are bright, bright purple. But the fish just mow them down in winter, specifically that bright, bold purple. I just do remarkably well with it. And again, it's almost a dead action thing for me. I throw it out and I just barely move it and then just let it soak. The less movement, the better. And a lot of times when you get bit with this technique in that cold water, they're not gonna tick that thing at all. A lot of times when you get bit, it's just a little tick. But when I'm throwing this, more often than not, I'll be moving that thing and I'll let it sit. And when I say I let it sit, I don't like lay down slack line and just leave it there. I just stop pulling it. The line is still tight so that if they do pick it up, I feel it. But usually what will happen is when I go to move it, it'll feel like a wet rag dragging in the water. There's just a little bit of weight there, almost like I've picked up grass. But there's not grass on the bottom this time of year. When I feel that little bit of extra weight, I set the hook. It's amazing how many times that little extra weight is really a 2 or a 3 or a 4 pound bass, and they've already got that thing picked up. I think just the way it's sitting there, it's really easy for them to just vacuum it up, and then they're not in a hurry to take off. It's cold water. I think they just sit there. And then all of a sudden I draw tight, nope, that's a fish. But that is a really, really good bait. And then one other one, the X Zone, this is the Ned Zone. Similar to this guy, where that tail section's flopping all over. Same sort of a deal here. Like, you can see it if I hold here, I mean, you can see that tail just flopping around, right? Like a little spring. This bait has a really good action in the water. When I just barely move it or barely shake it, it's down there wobbling. So when the water's warmer, you can be aggressive and that thing will really be rocking around. But when the water's really cold and you're barely moving at all, it's almost like secondary action, right? It's sitting there, I move that thing, it's just got that little bit of something. When those fish come up and they're sitting there looking at it, when the fish approach a bait, it literally pushes water and that wall of water will move that bait. Now that thing's responding as they come up to it, now it starts moving in front of them, even though you're not moving it. It's just that extra little something they pick up. I have a lot of confidence in that. So again, two of those more do nothing, almost no movement, and then two that are more of a profile. I'm fishing them for a reason, right? A little crawdad or a little lizard or salamander. Just really neat little profiled baits. And then again, fishing them super slow, fishing them in basic colors except for the crazy purple. In the video description, I'll link the exact baits in order, the exact heads, rods, reels, all that stuff for you. I'll give you my 2 or 3 favorite colors for every bait, just to really try and narrow it down for you. If a bait speaks to you, you want to try it in a couple colors, you'll know what some of our favorites are. As far as heads go, the main head I throw is this guy here. This is the Swagger, so it's tungsten. It's just more contact with the bottom, the better. So tungsten transmits easier. So I feel when I'm bumping into things, I feel it better with tungsten than I do lead. So I prefer to fish tungsten, especially around rocky stuff. Now granted, you're going to snag them up, you're gonna lose some, it's an exposed hook, so not everybody wants to do that, but that's my preferred. If I am throwing lead, this is my favorite. This is the actual Z-Man, and it's the Ned Rigs HD. I like this keeper. This is actually an easier keeper, that little lead keeper. It's easier than the wires keepers are to put that Elastec type plastic on it. But that Ned Rigs, that HD, is a little bit of a heavy wire hook, even though it's tiny. Nice little heavy wire hook, so I'm not bending out all the time. Some people want them to bend so they can get them out of snags. I don't, because in my mind, if I hook a bit, excuse me, there's smoke blowing down, I'm choking on it. If I hook a big one, I might bend out on that too, right? A great big fish can put a lot of steady pressure on, much like tugging on a snag, and I don't want to fold the hook out. So I'll throw that heavier wire hook and just risk the break-offs so that I know I'll get my fish. Tim's favorite is this one. This is an owner blockhead. He throws this one a lot when he's throwing a lead head. Again, it's just personal preference. He likes this style keeper. That little curved hook point, that is a nasty hook. It will get him. He prefers that one. I prefer that one. But again, I'll link them all in the description for you. Now, let's move on to tubes. So I throw these things interchangeably. Whew, I am choking on that smoke. The wind just turned directions and blew a big old wall of somebody's burning brush pile down there towards me. I'll throw them interchangeably. The Ned Rigs tend to stand up higher off the bottom. The tubes, they lay flat on the bottom. The tubes, if you're aggressive with them, have way more action than the Ned. The Ned will just sort of move, right? If you're barely touching it, you can get a lot of action out of it. But in general, if you're just pulling and stopping, the tube will have a lot more action as it's kind of flowing and scooting across the bottom. They tend to wander more. So it's just 2 different profiles for the same basic thing. My primary tubes, I can't even choose between them. This is an STH, this is a Big Bite. Both are great. I use them almost completely interchangeably. They're both really good options. The STH has longer tails on it, so it does flow more. Like if you're popping it and working it a little bit, it'll flow and drift more. But both of these are just dynamite options. And again, I'll link you my favorite colors for each one. They come in some different colors that are all really good colors, but you're going to see the same things, right? Like green pumpkin, a little bit of purple, green pumpkin, a little bit of blue actually. Kind of that brown orange, pumpkin orange, little green pumpkin, orange, purple. I'm staying with those same basic colors that I trust in the wintertime. But those are kind of my main deal, those 2 right there. 2 exceptions. One is going smaller. This is also the STH, but it's that little 2.5. If you've watched any of our tube videos this year, you know I've been fanatical about this thing this year. This little profile gets them. I have a very specific hook that I throw in it. I'll get to that in a minute, but that's one of my favorites. And then the other one, I mean, when you just need to get bit, it's a tiny profile. They will munch it. So quite a bit smaller than its big brother. Then the last one is this Dry Creek, their tournament tube. And again, it's just a profile thing. See how much narrower it is? Something about those Western reservoirs, they like those skinnier tubes. It's like when I go north, I throw a lot of fatter tubes, and I go west, I throw a lot of skinny tubes. It's not that they won't all work at some point, but there's definitely trends in what those fish like for whatever reason. So just keep that in mind. Dry Creek makes a super soft tube. They used to be harder. Back in the day, they were a pretty firm tube. They've really softened them up. They've got a lot of salt in them. It's a really, really good narrow option. So again, if you want to try the tube, just try a couple of different options. Tube heads, that's a whole different thing. So personally, fishing a tube, I really like an O'Shaughnessy style hook. That is a hook like, this is a round bend, okay? The name makes sense, round bend. This is an O'Shaughnessy. See how it has sort of that angled back and then it breaks over? I just have a ton of confidence in it. I've caught so many fish on them. I really like my hookup ratio with an O'Shaughnessy. It's just a fishy hook. It sticks them and it stays put. They're light wire hooks, but they stay hooked up really, really well. And you can see, I mean, they're a lot bigger hook than, say, a Ned rig, right? And it's a lot bigger, but it's light wire, so I can still throw it on really light line. I can throw it on 6-pound test. 6 or 7 is ideal. For the Ned rig, anywhere from 4 to 7. Tube, 6 to 7, 6 to 8. Anything like that, you'll be just fine. So I like those O'Shaughnessy style hooks. I tend to fish a lot of these lighter weights, like a 3/16 to a 1/4, and I'll really slow fish them on bottom. Tim fishes a lot of your heavier weights, like a 1/2 ounce. He'll pump them and really work them, let them drop. He's taking the same bait and using it for completely different things. But that's a heavier style head. Tim uses that a lot. I use a lot of those little light heads. Again, for me, it's interchangeable with a Ned rig where I'm just barely fishing that thing. The other one is that little guy. So here's my main tube head. Look how much smaller that one is, right? Short little hook, but it's heavy wire. And it fits perfectly in that little 2.5-inch tube. You split these legs here. Yep. It fits great in that profile. So that is the hook that I use for that, specifically that hook. And again, I'll link it down in the video description. It's a Blade Runner hook that was never even meant for a tube. It was meant to be a swim bait hook. But I found years ago that it worked great for this, and I've just stuck with it ever since. So tubes, Ned rigs, both absolute killers this time of year. If you just need to get a bite, those are baits you can rely on. And specifically, these are the baits that I rely on. Try 1 or 2 of them. Add them to your arsenal. When the going gets tough, or if you just want to go out and have fun, tie a couple of those on. Tie a tube on, tie a Ned on. See which one they want to eat that day. As far as gear goes, I throw the Ned on significantly lighter overall gear than I do the tube. Some of that's personal preference. I mean, I could take my Ned rig rod. This is the 822 Ned rig. Or I'm sorry, 821. I'm losing my mind here. 821 Ned rig rod. The 822's drop shot rod. 821 Ned rig rod. I can set a tube with this. But with a tube, it's that larger hook. I prefer a longer rod and a bigger sweeping hook set. So I tend to throw that on like a 7/6 medium. And that's why you hear me say, I'll go all the way down to 4-pound here. I'll go down to 6-pound here. It's because I'm fighting them on a stouter rod. So I need a little bit heavier line, right? It's not quite as forgiving, that rod. But that Ned rig rod for just slow fishing and just loads up and you just stick those fish and then just let them play. Super soft tip, we'll just dance and fight those fish. And you don't have to get an NRX Plus. I mean, this is my absolute favorite setup. NRX Plus paired to a Twin Power. The Twin Power is an unbelievable reel. It's like it feels like a Stella for half of the price. It's got that incredibly high-end feel. And that pairing is just mind-blowing. But you can also, bang for the buck. It sounds like garbage, but it's because I got this long tag end hanging out here dangling. This is a X-Pride 610 medium light paired up with a Vanford. And that, I would say, bang for the buck, that is the baddest pairing that there is. Incredible sensitivity, incredibly lightweight, still got that super light tip. That 610 medium light is an amazing, amazing little Ned rig rod. And then a Vanford bang for the buck is just a killer reel. Like Zodius, the 6.9 medium light is very similar. Bring it down a notch, not spend as much. There's options, right? And then again, tube fishing, 7.6 medium is just my deal. I just love that longer rod. When I feel them pick that thing up, I can just smash that hook set, and then that whole rod will load up, and you just lean back and just let those fish go. That's a northern thing. We use it for those giant smallmouths, just letting them pull and pull and wear themselves out. Obviously it works great everywhere for chasing largies and chasing spots and everything else, but two slightly different style rods for the two. You could get away with it on one, but if you're dialing it in, I like to do it with two. And again, I'll link my favorite combos down in the description. Hopefully this helps you guys. The big thing is just get out there on the water, fish with confidence, and catch some fish. But don't be afraid to throw that purple. It's magic. Don't be afraid to throw that little profile. That guy is so cool. And don't be afraid of throwing those tubes, man. They just catch fish. They catch them in warm water, they catch them in cold water. They excel in cold water. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.